and welcome to Vantage This Week, a show where we recap the highlights of the week gone by. Donald Trump's new visa rule has thrown thousands of Indian H-1B applicants into chaos. Interviews have been pushed back by months, travel plans are frozen and jobs are at risk. We'll tell you what changed and why Indian applicants are calling it a humiliation ritual. Tensions in East Asia continue to escalate this week. Japan flew with two US B-52 bombers in a show of force. The operation came just a day after a China-Russia joint patrol. We'll discuss. In Pakistan, Munir tightened his grip on power. He is now the supreme military commander. And in his first address in this new role, he targeted India. And finally, a shift in the Arctic may change this year's winter for millions. All this and more lined up. Let's get started.
We want safety, we want security, we want to make sure we're not letting the wrong people come into our country.
Trust Donald Trump to sow confusion. He keeps talking about retaining foreign talent, but right now he's harassing them. Thousands of H-1B applicants, Indian applicants, are stuck in a limbo. Their interviews have been delayed, their travel is on hold, and their jobs hang by a thread. It has triggered a lot of outrage on social media. People are calling it a humiliation ritual for Indians. So what's going on here? As you know, the H-1B is a work visa. It is reserved for people with special skills, maybe in AI or medicine or tech. Around 70% of these visas are secured by Indian workers. The initial visa is valid for 3 years, so before it expires, you have to renew it. And that is the root of this current crisis. You can't renew the H-1B visa from the United States. You must come back to your home country, in this case, India. You must attend interviews at US missions and then you get the visa stamped. Now, December is usually a busy time for this process. It's holiday season in America, so a lot of workers return to renew their H-1B. Just one problem though, Trump has made it a lot more difficult now. Thousands of interviews slated for December have been postponed. These are visa interviews. They were slated for this month. They've been postponed, and that too by many months. Applicants are getting emails at the last moment. An interview on December 15th has been delayed to March next year. A December 19th interview has been delayed to late May. What explains this crisis? President Trump's new rule. Here's what it says. As of December 15, the State Department will expand the requirement that an online presence review will be conducted for all H-1B applicants and their dependents. To facilitate this vetting, all applicants are instructed to adjust the privacy settings on all of their social media profiles to public. That's the new rule. If you want an H-1B, your social media profile must be public. Your Instagram, your X, your TikTok, all of it must be visible to the public. The State Department will then comb through your feed, and only then will you get an H-1B visa. The obvious question is why? What is the US government looking for? Again, let me quote. Every visa adjudication is a national security decision. The United States must be vigilant during the visa issuance process to ensure that those applying for admission to the United States do not intend to harm Americans or our national interests. Frankly, it's an insult to these applicants. Forget hurting America. Indian migrants have enriched the United States. Let me pull up a study for you. It traced the impact of Indian migrants on the US economy, and what did it find? Each Indian migrant reduces the US national debt by $1.6 million. This is over a period of 30 years. They pay a lot in taxes, they pay into American social services, they generate jobs, and most importantly, they are model residents. Yet, how does the US repay them? With insults about national security. But the question is, What is driving this policy? Why this attempt to curb the H-1B? Well, money is one factor. The H-1B application fee is $100,000. But Trump has unveiled a new pathway for work permits, and that is called the Trump Gold Card. This one, a gold card, costs $1 million. So maybe the US is driving applicants and companies towards the gold card. Forget this visa, apply for a gold card. That's what they want, perhaps. It means more money for the US government. But that's not the primary factor. There's also a big race factor. Let me introduce Mark Mitchell. He heads a pro-Trump polling company in the United States, and look at his statement this week. I have never in my life wanted anything more than this, to build a new corporate consultancy helping major firms de-Indianize. De-Indianize. He wants to cut out Indians from US firms. Why? Well, he explained that on a podcast. This man says Indian H-1B migrants are stealing jobs. And wait till you hear the logic. He says India produces a regular supply of young engineers. Meanwhile, the US has older, more expensive engineers, and that is why companies prefer the Indians. Well, congratulations, you have figured out demand and supply. But let's not kid ourselves. This is not about skill or salary or age. This is about skin color. This is about a so-called American superiority. It started with hardcore MAGA. They pushed Donald Trump to end the H-1B system, to kick out the Indian workers. At first he resisted, but his recent moves make you wonder what he wants. In fact, one line in his new H-1B policy sums it up. It says, and I'm quoting again, a US visa is a privilege, not a right. The fact is, it is not a privilege or a right. It is just a simple document for travel or work, a document you benefited from. You used Indian workers to enrich your economy. You built Silicon Valley with Indian talent. It was not a one-way bridge. It was a symbiotic relationship based on economic logic. The logic still holds today. It is just buried under layers of American racism. The crisis in East Asia is spiraling. Military tensions between Japan and China are escalating by the minute. And now American warplanes have entered the picture. These are the B-52 strategic bombers. These warplanes are capable of firing nuclear weapons, and the US has sent 2 of them. Today, these warplanes flew with Japanese jets. There were 2 American B-52 bombers. They were escorted by 3 Japanese F-35s. and 3 F-15 fighter jets. All these planes flew together in tight formation over waters between Japan and South Korea. And what was the goal of this operation? Usually these exercises are meant to test interoperability and readiness. Pilots practice real-time coordination, tactics and communication, basically everything they will need in a real crisis. But this was not a routine drill, because look at the location and the timing. This operation happened in the same region where Russia and China flew fighter jets, and it happened barely 24 hours after Russia and China did it. So today's operation is a response from Japan, and they were backed by the United States. Together they sent a message to Beijing and Moscow: do not challenge the status quo. Refrain from further military escalation. That was the message. Japan said today's response was a show of readiness. But let's be honest, it was more about deterrence. And China has responded. They have criticized Japan. They've said that Tokyo should, quote unquote, stop making a fuss.
China's Ministry of National Defense has released related information on the China-Russia Joint Patrol, and we made response yesterday. Let me stress once again that this China-Russia Joint Strategic Air Patrol is an operation carried out under the Annual Cooperation Plan and demonstrates the two sides' determination and capability in jointly responding to regional security challenges and safeguarding regional peace and stability. There is no need for Japan to make a fuss or feel targeted.
China is making this sound like a trivial matter, but Japan feels differently. They believe that China's aggressive actions are a national security threat. So they've sought help from the US military. Tokyo is building support. It is calling up allies. It has dialed leaders across global capitals. Japan's defense minister is reaching out to allies. So far, he's spoken to the leadership of Italy and he has briefed NATO. He's told them about the radar lock incident. This is what happened over the weekend. It was the most serious face-off in years between Japan and China. You see, when a fighter jet locks radar on another plane, it signals one thing. An attack could be just seconds away. So the target is forced to react. The other plane, they must either dodge the radar lock or they must prepare to fire back. And this is why Tokyo called this incident dangerous. Japan said China had crossed a line. Chinese jets were a step away from firing a missile. But China insists that none of this happened. And after days of silence, the US has spoken. The US State Department finally issued a statement yesterday. It criticized China. It called the US-Japan alliance unwavering. Then the American warplanes joined the picture. The Americans sent these B-52 bombers. And now we have four powers, China and Russia on one side, Japan and the US on the other, flexing their military might in the same skies. It's a powder keg. One misstep and it could blow up into a full-fledged war. This is making Japanese businesses nervous. Reuters has released a survey. It reveals the mood of corporate Japan. What are their top concerns for 2026? That's the question they were asked. And the answer was not inflation or energy. The answer was China. 25% of Japanese firms said that China was their biggest worry, their number one risk. And their number two risk? US trade policies. 22% of businesses flagged that as a risk. And it's understandable. China and America are key trading partners for Japan. In fact, China is Japan's biggest trading partner. It supplies important components to Japanese industry like rare earths and electronics parts. So if relations hit a new low, they will hit supply chains in Japan. And China is already building pressure. China has issued travel warnings. It has forced airlines to cancel flights to Japan. It has blocked supplies of Japanese seafood. All these moves impact business confidence. A military escalation only makes it worse. And this should be a worry, not just for Japan, but for the region and the world. We cannot afford another flashpoint, let alone a war. Our next story takes us to the Caribbean, to a scene straight out of a military playbook. The US has seized a large oil tanker right off the coast of Venezuela, and the way it happened has stunned the region. Before we get into the details, listen to what US President Donald Trump has said.
As you probably know, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually.
So what is this tanker and why did the US move in? Let's break it down for you. The ship is called the Skipper. It is not a Venezuelan ship. It is a foreign vessel. Reports say it is owned by a company in Nigeria. It was sailing under a flag that was fake, but it was carrying Venezuelan oil. How much? Almost 2 million barrels of heavy crude. And that is a huge load. Now, to give you some context, heavy crude is thick and slow to move. To carry it, you need a super tanker. It is a giant ship built for massive ocean transport, and the Skipper is one such ship. This is the ship that the US went after. The helicopters took off from the USS Gerald Ford. It's the world's largest aircraft carrier, the Gerald Ford, and it has been in the region as part of Washington's military buildup. The helicopters flew towards the tanker. They hovered right above it, and then troops came down on ropes. They landed on the deck, and within minutes, they took control of the ship. And why was the ship targeted? US Attorney General Pam Bondi explained the reasons. She said the tanker had been sanctioned for years. It was part of an illicit shipping network, one that moved sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran, and that supported foreign terrorist organizations. So in Washington's eyes, this seizure was justified. But that still leaves one big question. What happens to the tanker and its cargo now? Reporters put that question directly to US President Trump, and this is what he said.
We're interested in the seizure of this tanker. What happens to the oil on that ship?
Well, we keep it, I guess.
Where does it go? What port does it go to?
Well, you have to follow the tanker. You know, you're a good newsman, just follow the tanker.
Do you know where it was going? Was it going
follow
to
it.
China?
Get a helicopter and follow the tanker.
Is it true it's going to
But we're
Cuba?
I assume we're going to keep the oil.
This answer has raised even more questions because this was not a small cargo. Reports say about half the oil on board was heading to Cuba. The rest belonged to Venezuela. And oil is Venezuela's main source of money. It is their biggest export and an economic lifeline. So losing a shipment this large is a big blow for Caracas. Here's how it's responding to the seizure. Venezuela has called it a blatant theft and an act of international piracy. Those are the words they use. Venezuela says this is part of a long-running US campaign, a campaign to go after Venezuela's oil. It also said it would denounce this incident before international bodies. Cuba has backed Venezuela's condemnation. Its president called the seizure, and I'm quoting, a violation of international law and an escalation of aggression. So the outrage is only building. But what looks like one seizure is actually part of a much larger picture, a picture that involves US warships, surveillance flights, and a steady military buildup in the Caribbean. Like I said, Washington has been expanding its presence in these waters. Since the month of September, the US has conducted several strikes in the region. It has attacked boats and accused them of trafficking drugs. And look at the toll. More than 80 people have been killed so far, 80 people. The campaign is part of a US plan to pressure Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Washington has accused his government of narco-terrorism. Maduro, of course, has denied it. He says this is not about drugs or security at all. This is a tactic to oust his regime.
We say no to interventionism, no to plans for destabilization and regime change. The U.S. government should focus on governing its own country.
So this is not about one oil tanker or a few so-called drug boats. This is about power, oil, military force in the Caribbean, and how far the US is willing to go to dethrone Maduro in Venezuela. India is the world's fifth biggest aviation market. If you consider domestic numbers, it's the third largest domestic aviation market in the world. The aim is to become number one. Millions of new passengers take their first flight every year. The government is building airports every month. Travel is booming. This should be the perfect market for any airline. But here's the fact. India is also the biggest graveyard of airlines. I know it sounds dramatic, but look at the numbers. Since the year 2000, at least 14 major Indian airlines have collapsed. 14 airlines. Some disappeared quietly. Some left behind a huge pile of debt, unpaid salaries, and grounded aircraft. The question is why? This is a country where demand is exploding. So why are airlines failing here? And what is the solution to the current crisis? To understand that, we'll have to rewind because our story begins in the 2000s. It was a romantic era of Indian aviation. Flying suddenly became affordable. A lot of carriers entered the arena. You had Air Sahara, SpiceJet, Indigo, Go Air, Air Deccan, Paramount, Jet Airways, Kingfisher. Everyone was expanding. Everyone believed that they would win. But nobody asked the key question. Can India actually support all these airlines? The answer, as they figured later, was no. You see, flying a plane is expensive everywhere in the world, but flying a plane in India is even more expensive because there are three big killers, three major challenges. Number one, aviation turbine fuel, or ATF. ATF makes up about 40% of airline costs, 40. In India, it is taxed very high. And on top of that, some states slap an additional VAT, that's value-added tax, on fuel that is already taxed. So the costs pile up. When global oil prices go up, Indian carriers bleed. When the rupee weakens, Indian carriers bleed more. So it's an expensive business to be in. Challenge number two, dependency on the dollar. Aircraft leasing, maintenance, spare costs, all of it is done in US dollars. But your ticket revenue, that's in Indian rupees. So it cuts in the profit margins. Challenge number three, airport costs. Delhi and Mumbai airports are among the costliest in the world. Even parking an aircraft is expensive. And amid all of this, the flight prices still have to be low enough to attract customers. This creates the perfect storm. So after the spurt of the early 2000s, the cracks began to show. Soon the cracks became fractures, and then the fractures became funerals. In 2007, Air Sahara was facing intense competition. It suffered operational losses. It collapsed and was finally acquired by Jet Airways. That same year, Air Deccan also failed. It was India's pioneering low-cost airline, but it was under financial pressure, and that led to its merger with Kingfisher Airlines. Then in 2012, Kingfisher faced the same fate. Its slogan was, "Fly the good times." Well, the good times ended that year. The airline collapsed under mountains of debt. But the biggest shock came in 2019. Jet Airways was India's best full-service airline, but competition and debt caused it to shut shop. In 2023, Go First met the same fate. And for the same reasons, mounting liabilities. So clearly there is a pattern. Airlines fail because of intense competition and growing debt. And with every collapse, one player became stronger. That was Indigo. As competitors fell, Indigo absorbed their pilots, their aircraft, and their passengers. By the early 2020s, India had entered a new aviation era, a duopoly. Indigo held around 65% of the market. Air India had another 20 to 25%. We do have other players like SpiceJet and Akasa, but they are minnows in the shark tank. Now, a duopoly is not always bad, but a duopoly in aviation is very bad. If one player wobbles, the whole system collapses. And that's what happened this week. The government agrees too. It says India needs at least 5 big airlines.
We have envisioned the demand to be growing at such a rate that we want to have more airlines in the picture. And I have continuously said on the floor of the House, in both the Houses and outside also whenever I'm speaking, that India today has the capacity of 5 big airlines. We are talking about 2 airlines, but the capacity, the demand that India is creating today, we need to have 5 big airlines. And that has been the efforts from the ministry to encourage more airlines to come in.
India needs 5 big airlines. The question is, what are we doing to get there? Because India's aviation potential is unimaginable. Per capita flying is still low, but aspiration is sky high. Urbanization is booming. Airports are multiplying. India is adding more passengers every year than the population of Australia. 83 airports have come up in the last decade. But we need a lot more to become the world's biggest aviation market. First of all, we need stable policies. You cannot have overnight rule changes or panic rollbacks. Rules have to benefit all players. They have to benefit both airlines and passengers. It cannot be a one-way street. Second, we need rational fuel taxes. Higher taxes only eat into the profit margins and make the business harder to sustain. 3, we need financial discipline. Airlines must stop expanding like lottery winners. 4, we need strong competitors. Indigo may be the market leader, but Air India's revival is also critical. Akasa needs room to grow. So does SpiceJet. And finally, we need new entrants. The market needs more airlines because India cannot depend on a duopoly to carry 1 billion people to the skies. It must revamp the whole system. Because no matter how bright the lights shine, no plane can take off from a broken runway. Kim Jong-un can celebrate because there's a new supreme leader in his club, Asim Munir of Pakistan. His career progression will make you jealous. Corps Commander in 2019, Army Chief in 2022, Field Marshal in 2025 and Supreme Military Commander also in 2025. Do you know when this happens? When you don't just work for a company, you own it. And that's Asim Munir. He is the de facto king of Pakistan. Last week, he took over as the Chief of Defence Forces, sort of like a tri-service chief. He will command the Army, the Navy and the Air Force. And fun fact, he will also be Army Chief. That's 2 hats for Munir. Chief of Army and Chief of Defence Forces, CDF. Why 2 hats? Because who cares? The Pakistani government passed a constitutional amendment last month. It formalized what was already known, that Asim Munir rules Pakistan. He took over as Supreme Commander last week and yesterday he gave his maiden speech. Frankly, ChatGPT could have written it. That's how predictable it was. Munir went on a rant against India. Let me quote from what he said. India should not be a victim of any self-deception or assumption. Next time, Pakistan's response will be even swifter and more severe. Talk about peak delusion. Because forget a response. Back in May, Pakistan did not even know what hit them. They simply woke up to cratered runways and destroyed hangars. Munir got his first promotion for that brilliant loss. Now he's got his second. The Supreme Commander also had a message for his other brother. That's the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. Again, let me quote from what he said. A clear message has been given to the Taliban regime that it has no choice but to choose between the TTP and Pakistan. The TTP is the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. Islamabad says Kabul is shielding this group. This is basically the Pakistani Taliban, the TTP. Kabul says it is Pakistan's internal matter. So Asim Munir has issued an ultimatum. You choose us or the TTP. As far as choices go, that's a tough one. One side is radical and rogue. It carries out terror attacks on innocents. It has no money, no organization, and no future. On the other side is the TTP. The fact is, Munir's problems go beyond terror. Politically, his position is not secure yet. He faces an unyielding opponent in former Prime Minister Imran Khan. Yes, his party has been defanged, Imran Khan's party, but his supporters hold considerable influence. And we saw that last week. Rumors spread that Imran Khan had died in prison, and on cue, massive protests broke out in Pakistan. They managed to paralyze major Pakistani cities. Interestingly, the Indian Foreign Ministry was asked about this turn of events. Listen to their response.
देखिए, पाकिस्तान में जो भी घटनाएं होती है उस पर हमारी पैनी नजर रहती है, लेकिन जहां तक लोकतंत्र की बात कह रहे हैं आप कि पाकिस्तान में लोकतंत्र लचीला हो रहा है, उसमें कमजोरी आ रहा है, उसकी ताकतों को कमजोर किया जा रहा है. लोकतंत्र और पाकिस्तान दोनों साथ साथ में नहीं जाते.
Hard to argue with that. We rarely use Pakistan and democracy in the same sentence. When we do, it is to say that Pakistan is not a democracy. But on a serious note, what does all of this mean for India? Munir's elevation and his speech, what does it mean? Mainly 2 things. One, his strategy remains unchanged. Even as Army Chief, Asim Munir was a warmonger. You may remember his comments on Kashmir in April this year. He called Kashmir Pakistan's jugular vein. And days later, the Pahalgam attack happened. Clearly, that warmongering approach has not changed. His first instinct was to warn and threaten India. That's the first thing to note. Secondly, Asim Munir is not your typical Pakistani general. He's not happy holding the remote control. He wants to be seen holding it. He wants the country and the world to know his power. And that makes him dangerous. Look at his moves in the last 4 years. In 2022, he ousted Imran Khan. In 2023, he jailed Imran Khan with hundreds of cases. In 2024, he rigged an election to install his loyalists. In 2025, he triggered a conflict with India. And the same year, he became Supreme Commander. So in 4 years, Asim Munir has gone from kingmaker to king. He is clearly ambitious and dangerous. And from all accounts, he's also radical and reckless. This man has his fingers on Pakistan's nuclear arsenal. It's not just a worry for India, it should be a worry for the whole world. South Asia's budding romance could be at risk. I'm talking about Pakistan and Bangladesh. It's been a whirlwind romance so far. Back-to-back visits, multiple meetings, crucial deals. It's almost like the horrors of 1971 have been forgotten. But could that be at risk? I ask because of a series of recent events. First, a statement from the Pakistani military. Last weekend, they were talking about former Prime Minister Imran Khan, about his so-called rebellious activities. In that statement, the army also talked about Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Now, Sheikh Mujib is Bangladesh's founder. He's also the father of Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister who was ousted last year. Pakistan's army called Sheikh Mujibur Rahman a traitor. Listen to this.
फॉलो करें इसके मीडिया में जो इसकी ट्वीट्स आती हैं, इसको देखें ये कितना इम्प्रेस है, जो एक नॉन गद्दार है इस मुल्क का, शेख मुजीबुर रहमान, उसकी अफकार से कितना मुतासिर है, बार बार उसको कोट करता है, उसकी मिसालें देता है। उसको क्या प्रॉब्लम है कि वो ये कहे कि जो फौज के साथ बैठ के कोई वर्कशॉप में बैठेगा वो गद्दार है।
Some quick history here. Bangladesh used to be part of Pakistan, but after years of discrimination, they wanted to separate. And in the 1960s and 70s, a freedom movement took shape. This movement was led by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Pakistan responded with a brutal crackdown. They killed around 3 million people in present-day Bangladesh. In the end, it was India's involvement that ended the crisis. India defeated the Pakistani military, and thus Bangladesh was born. In fact, December is Victory Month in Dhaka. It was on December 16 that Pakistan surrendered to India. Just days before that, Islamabad calls Mujib a traitor. It has triggered a backlash in Dhaka. Here's what a prominent Bangladeshi newspaper published, and I'm quoting. This is what they said. To use such language in December, our month of victory, is an affront to our history and the sacrifices of 1971. It is also harmful to Bangladesh-Pakistan relations, especially at a time when both countries have recently made efforts to revive ties. So why did Pakistan's military say this? For starters, they were blinded by animosity towards Imran Khan. They want to portray him as a national enemy, as someone who wants to weaken and destroy Pakistan. And in their mind, that description fits Mujib as well. Pakistan's army sees 1971 as one of their worst moments. So that's one reason why they called him a traitor. Secondly, they may have underestimated the Bangladeshi sentiment. You see, Mujib is not as popular as he used to be. His statues were attacked last year. Holidays linked to him have been cancelled. Even history books have been altered to downplay his role in 1971. Maybe that's why Pakistan's army attacked him. And so far, we've not heard from the interim regime, which is frankly shameful. Imagine if the UK called George Washington a traitor, or if they called Mahatma Gandhi a traitor. How would India or the US react? Any self-respecting country would push back, but Dhaka so far has been silent. Having said that, there is one interesting development. Pakistani singer Atif Aslam was supposed to stage a concert in Dhaka tomorrow, but the interim government in Bangladesh has denied permission. And here's the reason they've given, apparently due to security concerns. They thought a Pakistani singer's concert in Victory Month was a risk. Talk about a late realization. But will any of this change Dhaka's approach to Pakistan? Will it hamper the ongoing reset? Well, the interim regime is on its way out. Bangladesh will hold elections on February 12th. After that, an elected government will take over. And who will lead that government? Most likely the BNP. That's the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, BNP. In the past, the BNP has been close to Pakistan, but now those equations have changed. The BNP's main rival is the radical Jamaat-e-Islami, and the Jamaat has very strong ties to the Pakistani deep state. So perhaps the BNP will rethink. In fact, we saw indications of that earlier this year. The BNP chief said he would put Bangladesh first, not Delhi or Pindi. Pindi is short for Rawalpindi. That's where the Pakistani army is headquartered. I know that Pakistan singled out Sheikh Mujib in their statement, but the fact is, it's a broader sentiment. Pakistan's army sees Bangladeshis as traitors, as people who divided and broke their country. Whoever comes to power in Dhaka should be mindful of that. There are two kinds of politics. One is the politics of convenience, the other is the politics of principles. It's easy to defend your principles, but it's a lot harder to defend your convenience. Just ask US Vice President J.D. Vance. He has become the chief spokesman for Donald Trump's movement, right-wing, conservative, anti-woke, but also well-spoken. Yesterday, he triggered a new controversy. Let me quote from J.D. Vance's statement. This is what he said. Mass migration is theft of the American dream. It has always been this way, and every position paper, think tank piece, and econometric study suggesting otherwise is paid for by the people getting rich off the old system. Talk about killing a debate. First, he makes an outlandish claim, and then he says if you disagree, you are on someone's payroll. Let's focus on the first bit. J.D. Vance says mass migration is theft of the American dream. This claim triggered outrage on social media. Look at one popular response. That means you have to send Usha, her Indian family, and your biracial kids back to India. Let us know when you buy the plane tickets, you must lead by example. Some context here. Usha is J.D. Vance's wife. She was born to Indian immigrant parents. Her children with J.D. Vance are also half Indian. So people are saying, start with your own family. If immigration is so bad, send them back to India. Now, this criticism is not new for J.D. Vance. He faces fire from the left and the right. His own supporters have a problem with Usha Vance's religion. She's called herself a practicing Hindu. But many MAGA Republicans see Hinduism as a pagan religion. A few weeks ago, J.D. Vance tried to appease them. He publicly wished that his wife would convert to Christianity. And now he's facing attacks from the left. Well, this is what happens when you play politics of convenience. When you fan the flames of hate for votes, your position becomes indefensible. For starters, this is a change in goalposts. The Trump camp began by attacking illegal migration, and that is understandable. By all means, deport illegal aliens, as you call them. It's your country, it's your policy. But now the goalpost has changed to mass migration, not illegal, mass migration. And don't look at this claim in isolation. Look at what Trump is doing. The US president banned immigration from so-called third world countries, yet he is taking migrants from specific groups. He is taking white South Africans or Eastern Europeans. So what really is the problem here? Is it mass migration or is it the color of the migrants? Secondly, look at the double standard. Trump himself comes from a family of migrants. His grandfather used to live in present-day Germany. He went to the US in the 1880s. In fact, none of his grandparents was born in America. All of them immigrated. Yet that is not considered a problem. The migration of Usha Vance's family is also not a problem. Only current migration is the problem. I'm afraid this is an old trick. The US has seen multiple waves of immigration. Experts talk about 4 main waves of immigration that the US has seen. The first one was from 1680 to 1776. Now, most of these immigrants were Germans, Scots, and Irish. The second wave was from 1820 to 1890. These included Norwegians and Chinese. The third wave was during industrialization. These immigrants came from Eastern and Southern Europe. And the fourth wave began in 1965. This wave is still bringing Asian immigrants to the United States. The fact is, all of these waves were criticized. The same concerns were raised in the 1600s, in the 1700s, in the 1900s. But in the end, economics prevailed. The US needed these immigrants, so the migration continued. And do not get us wrong here. We are not saying that Washington has an obligation to welcome migrants. No country does. Your borders, your policy. But don't hide behind double standards. You make fake genocide claims to welcome white South Africans, but you weaponize mass shootings to keep out Afghans. This double standard is the problem. So J.D. Vance should not be surprised at the outrage. He is a walking contradiction in the MAGA world. Picture this. It's almost midnight. Your ring light is dying. Your phone is begging for storage. You have reshot a 12-second clip so many times that you're questioning your life choices, and yet tomorrow morning you will be back at it. This is the picture of India's creator economy. It's a digital gold rush where 4 million people are chasing fame through a 6-inch screen. But how many really walk away with money? How big is this creator economy, and what are the platforms earning from it? It's a fascinating story. It began in the 2010s. Back then, being a content creator was basically code for being unemployed. This is how a YouTuber lied to their relatives about their job. But today it's a $1.5 billion industry. It influences $350 billion in consumer spending. By the year 2030, that number could go up to $1 trillion, a trillion with a T. The numbers are unambiguous. Creators are not just entertainers anymore. They're India's new age sales force, the new culture shapers, the trendsetters, and in some cases, mini media companies. So how many creators are we talking about? Anywhere between 2 to 2.5 million, 2 million to 2.5 million. These are active digital creators. These are people who post regularly and who have more than 1,000 followers. If you add those who post scarcely, the number goes up to 4 million. That could be the population of a small nation trying to go viral every single minute. And this number is growing every year. By 20%, that's the average growth, 20%. It's thanks to cheap data and the rise of short videos. But here's the part that everyone wants to know. Who makes the money and how much do they make? And here's the plot twist. Only 8 to 10% of creators in India make meaningful money. Let that sink in. Out of 2 million active creators, only 2 to 2.5 lakh consistently earn, either through ads or brand deals or subscriptions or courses. What about the rest? Well, they earn small, irregular amounts, mostly under 15 to 20,000 rupees a month from content. So a staggering 88% of creators do not rely on social media as their primary source of income. Now let's look at where this money is coming from. The first source is sponsored content. More than 75% creators say that Instagram brand deals are their #1 source of money. And you can see why. If you're a nano creator, a small creator, you will make up to 5,000 rupees for every post. For micro, it's around 80,000 rupees. Macro, up to 5 lakh rupees. And e-commerce alone spends 700 to 800 crore rupees on creators every year. The second source is YouTube ads. You get paid for every 1,000 views. Depending on the subject, you get anywhere between 30 and 250 rupees. You earn 55% of the ad and subscription revenue, and YouTube Shorts is the rising star. You get revenue share, plus huge audience, plus consistent income. The third source of income is subscriptions. It is still a niche sector, but it is catching up. And the fourth is courses, workshops, and brands, and this is where the real money lies. So creators are launching brands from beauty and apparel to nutrition because they must evolve. And this is the harshest truth. An average creator career is 3 to 4 years. After that, trends die, engagement drops, platforms push for new faces, and burnout kills the momentum. 62% of creators have reported burnout. What makes it worse is the unpredictability of algorithms and the confusing monetization rules. And yet, this space is booming. It is drawing more and more people. And if you really want to understand India's creator economy, forget the creators for a moment. Follow the money, because the money leads to one place. The social media platforms, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Snapchat, they are the real winners here. Look at Meta's India revenue last year. It was 22,730 crore rupees. That's around $2.7 billion. This is what Meta made in India. This is a 15-fold increase since 2021. And then there's YouTube. YouTube says it added 16,000 crore rupees to India's GDP last year. That's around $1.78 billion. But how much did YouTube add to its own revenue from India? 14,300 crore rupees, that's $1.6 billion. So content creators may be driving the growth, but it's the platforms that are pocketing the real gains. So should you become a creator? Well, absolutely, if you understand the rules. Do not quit your job immediately though. Start content creation as a side hustle, see how it works for you. Do remember that to make it viable, a viable source of income, you will have to work hard. You'll have to pick a niche. Generic creators drown, specific creators scale. Also, think like a business from day one. You're not just making videos, you're building an asset. You must understand everything from sales to marketing. You must have a clear view of who your audience will be. Because in the end, this is not just about views or virality or your reel hitting 1 million. This is about something bigger. The creator economy is not a lottery, it's a long game. If you play it well, the trillion-dollar future is waiting for you. What if I told you that the most dangerous thing in your kitchen is not the knife or the gas stove, but the food that you eat? Every day we trust what we put on our plates, but lately that trust is starting to crack. Because look at these headlines. Breads in India contain hazardous chemicals. 97% milk samples found adulterated in one Indian state. And now it seems even eggs are not safe. Here's what has happened. A YouTube channel tested a batch of eggs from Eggo's Nutrition. This is a startup selling the idea of cruelty-free, hygienic, chemical-free eggs. The pitch was to India's new health-obsessed middle class, but the report found something far from healthy. It found two chemicals, nitrofuran and nitroamidazole. Now, both are banned for use in poultry. Both are classified as genotoxic. That means they can mess with your DNA, and if that goes on long enough, it can potentially cause diseases like cancer. Now, here's the caveat. It was a single test conducted on a single batch. Of course, Eggo's Nutrition has denied the claims. They say their eggs are safe, they are antibiotic-free, and that the brand is committed to safety. Only a wider study of eggs in the market can reveal the full picture, the whole picture. But we get why this may have caused a stir, because food adulteration in India is an old and oft-repeated story. It's a long tale with many, many chapters. Take milk, for instance. Best case scenario, your milk is watered down. Worst case, it is mixed with detergent, urea and cheap fat. Paneer or cottage cheese is stuffed with starch or worse. Spices have artificial textile dyes. They contain lead chromate. These are chemicals used to color clothes. They're now coloring your chili and turmeric. Cereals and pulses, they're coated with talc to make them shine. Many are polished with illegal whitening agents. Rice in some regions carries arsenic. Oils, mustard oil adulteration caused entire epidemics of dropsy. Fruits and vegetables, pesticides are sprayed so heavily that no amount of washing is enough. Some samples exceed global residue limits several times over. Fish often contains formalin. This is added to keep it fresh, but this is the same chemical that is used to preserve dead bodies. And now even eggs may contain banned DNA-damaging compounds. Imagine that. And here's where the story gets even more uncomfortable. Why do these scandals break through independent reports? Why does the FSSAI not spot it? That is the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. It is India's food regulator. Yet every major food revelation comes from someone outside the government, because the watchdog acts more like a hall monitor than a regulator. Food inspection teams are understaffed, testing labs are limited, penalties for adulteration are laughable, and enforcement is patchy. So where exactly does the Indian consumer go? What do they eat? From 2022 to 2023, about 177,000 samples were analyzed. Around 44,600 were non-conforming. That's roughly 25% of the samples tested. And that means 1/4 could have been adulterated. And these are just the tested samples. Thousands remain untested. And honestly, everyone knows the truth. Food adulteration is a reality. Food is expected to be adulterated in India. And that is a tragedy. You buy milk with suspicion, you smell fruits like a detective, and now you look at eggs like they're radioactive. An entire nation has become paranoid because the system has consistently failed them. This needs to change. And we can start with 3 things. First, a regulator that regulates, not reacts. Random sampling must be aggressive, routine, and nationwide, and also public. 2, zero tolerance for banned substances. If it is genotoxic, there is no permissible limit. And 3, real consequences for adulteration, not 50,000 rupee fines, not license suspensions, actual criminal prosecution for endangering lives. India needs something it has not had in a long, long time, a national conversation about what we are eating and what we are allowing. Because at the end of the day, the real crisis is not a chemical in the egg. The crisis is in the confidence. And unless India fixes that, this crisis of trust will only get deeper. Our next story is about a shift in the Arctic. It's a shift that could change winter for millions this year. Scientists say something unusual is happening over the Arctic. The air circulation there has weakened. What does that mean? This circulation usually keeps the coldest air locked near the North Pole. But this year, it is not strong enough. So more of that cold air is moving south. And that is why many regions are bracing for a sharper winter this year. North America is already seeing early effects. Europe is also bracing for a drop in temperatures. Even India is preparing for more colder days ahead. So what caused this shift in the first place? What does this mean for different regions? And could this indeed turn into a winter of the century? Here's a report.
This year, winter has arrived with signals that something is different. These are signals from the atmosphere and from the scientists who say this season may be more dramatic than usual. Across the Northern Hemisphere, a major shift is unfolding. It is a shift that begins high above the North Pole, and that is now influencing weather across Europe, North America, and parts of Asia. The polar vortex is at the center of this story. It is a large ring of strong winds that circles the Arctic. It normally traps the coldest air over the pole, but this winter, reports say it is weaker than usual. In some regions, it is even split. This weakening is linked to a sudden warming above us. High above the weather we experience each day sits a calm layer called the stratosphere. It contains the ozone layer, and it is the home of the polar vortex. Right now, the stratosphere above the Arctic is warming rapidly. This happens when unusual atmospheric waves push upward and disrupt the vortex. Scientists call this a sudden stratospheric warming event. The warming slows the vortex winds. It can even reverse them. Once that happens, Arctic air can escape south into Europe, North America, and Asia. This is already visible in North America. Part of the weakened vortex has shifted over Alaska and Arctic Canada. It is pushing frigid Arctic air into the United States. Some experts call this the Polar Express pattern. It is a pattern where Arctic air travels in a straight path from northwest to southeast. It happens when high pressure blocks the west and a deep trough opens in the east. This creates a corridor that allows cold air to flow south. Across Canada and the United States, temperatures are expected to fall well below normal. Experts say some regions may drop far below freezing levels. Europe is watching the same warnings. Reports suggest the continent is also feeling the effects of the weaker vortex. Germany may face Arctic outbreaks after Christmas. Experts say the final outcome remains open, but the risk of a colder phase is rising. India is also preparing for a sharper winter. The India Meteorological Department expects more cold wave days in central, northwest, and northeast India. The chill is linked to both the weakened polar vortex and La Niña. La Niña is a cooling pattern in the Pacific Ocean that influences weather worldwide, and it is expected to continue into early 2026. Scientists say the broader picture is clear, but the exact intensity and timing can still shift. A weakened polar vortex can wobble for weeks, and it can take more than a month to recover. So, brace yourselves. This winter may hold some surprises.
It was just a normal day in Pakistan's National Assembly. Speaker Ayaz Sadiq was going on with his routine work when he found this on the chamber floor. 10 5,000 Pakistani rupee notes. That's 50,000 Pakistani rupees. So he waved it in the air and asked the owner to claim it. 12 lawmakers raised their hands. 12 lawmakers for 10 notes. Do the math. They finally found the real owner, but the internet exploded in memes. Take a look at this.
ये किसी के पैसे गिर गए, ये को 10-12 हाथ खड़े हो गए, पैसे इतने नहीं है जितने लोगों के हाथ खड़े, ये तो सारे हाउस के हाथ खड़े हो गए। ये थैंक यू जो भी मुझे दे के गया।